Canadian families, we are on the Titanic. The iceberg hasn't hit yet, so we're not sinking. If we don't shift course, that iceberg is coming for us.
I'm not planning on leaving. I'm fighting. We want to make this country incredibly great.
We begin to see that it really isn't about diversity. It is about punishing the people who perform beyond the mean.
For people who don't care, where do you see Canada going?
Oh, it's catastrophic. It is that bad.
What is the carbon tax doing to lower carbon emissions?
Exactly.
I love this country. I was born in this country. I believe in what this country stands for. I believe in its people. I believe as a place opportunity for all to come and live, but the path that we're on is not working, and we are not going to be what we're supposed to be if we continue along this path.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We are live.
What's going on, Jared? How are you?
I'm good.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
I love the live shows.
I have fun with them, too.
I do, too. Feels nice to see everybody. We got a number of people watching. The first person to comment is my very own sister, Jenny.
Well, that's very supportive.
Shout out right there.
Very, very loving sister.
I thought this might be our intro song slightly. I don't want to get a copyright strike.
You're going to shut down the whole thing.
I know. I'm going to turn away so we don't
in.
get a strike there.
Well, we're excited to be with you guys tonight. We're going to be chatting, bringing some great friends onto the show. We got Leighton Grey coming up around the corner.
Our very own Return to Reason.
That's right. He's got an awesome program. The guy has got a lot of great thoughts. If you aren't checking his stuff out, you should be already. Checking his out on the Grey Matter podcast, Grey Matter from YouTube, Twitter, all those things. Looking forward to hearing his thoughts from his perspective and also what it means for Canada. Stockwell Day, who's going to be joining us as well. I'm super excited to hear from him.
Stockwell, I remember the first time I met Stockwell Day, I actually bumped into him on a sidewalk in Vancouver with Leon.
How long ago would that have been?
Literally bumped into him. 15 years ago, 14 years ago.
Well, the last time we saw him, we literally bumped into him in a line at an event here in Calgary.
Yeah.
That was probably 6-7 months ago.
Yep. For those, my mom used to volunteer for Stockwell's campaign when he was running to be Prime Minister.
Really?
Yeah, and my mom always was actively involved in all those things, and so she was volunteering for his campaign at our local school elections night.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, as the former leader of the opposition, steeped in politics and has had quite a career as well, it's going to be interesting to hear his thoughts.
Brilliant.
I want to ask him as well, what are his insights in terms of what this means for Canada, in terms of the relationship between Canada and U.S.
Yeah.
Right now, it's a Trudeau-Trump relationship that would start again in January. So I want to know his outlook. Is this good? Is this bad for Canada?
Yeah.
Is it Trump obviously is going to be very nationalistic, not in the negative sense, in the sense of U.S. first.
Yeah, putting
so
USA
how can Canada
first.
come alongside?
Refreshing take on that for sure. I want to shout out a number of people: Diane St. Jean, Connor Matchett. I'm butchering some of these names maybe. Amanda Craig, Dylan Ricard, Pierre Prest. Familiar name there.
You got the whole Prest fam out tonight.
Hey, that's a good thing when your family likes to watch what you do. That's good.
Do they though?
I hope. I don't know. I don't know if it's good.
Maybe
it's
their
not
love
good.
is just.
Maybe I'm in a vacuum here.
Above all. I feel like you're further away from me tonight.
You do
than
feel
normally.
further. I was wondering, do we measure this set when we swap it over? I'm not sure. I feel like we do, but you feel very far.
I'm not having any separation.
This feels awkwardly far.
Anxiety though, so we're good. And we got another friend joining, David Leis, who's going to be joining later on in the show as well. Always great to hear his thoughts.
Yep.
Leaders on the Frontier, part of the whole Return to Reason team. So it's always fun bringing smarter guys on than us.
Absolutely.
to ask them what they think.
Love it.
And pull around. So as before we got into it, what's your initial thoughts, Jer? Like just coming off from last night, did you stay up to watch until it was called?
I stayed up till 1:30 Mountain Time.
Okay.
I was very surprised.
You were, hey?
I didn't think Trump was going to win.
Come on, really?
I didn't actually think he was going to win. Nope. I was very surprised. And so to see it kind of happen in real time, I have a group chat with my friends and we're all texting each other. And a few of them are Americans. And I did not know what to see. And the reason for that is, and this is something we've talked about on the show, is that the algorithms that we all watch are designed to show you what you like and what you see and what your political bend is. And that's the thing I hate the most. So you never know. whatever you look for, you'll find. If you want to look for great comments on Trump, you'll find them. If you want to look for bad ones, you'll find them. And it'll just continue to show you that vacuum of data. And so that's why I don't know. I have no clue. And so as it was happening and as it was continuing to go, I was like, man, this is nuts. And then when he won the Senate first, the Senate was decided first, I was like, whoa, that's interesting. And then eventually it became to the electoral votes, and then eventually the House, everything.
It was a sweep for him.
Yeah, it was a complete sweep.
It just, for me, the way, like, if I was betting, I would have bet on him. I think because you look at, when it comes down to what they were running on.
Do you bet? Yeah.
Pardon?
Do you bet?
No. But there were bets. I'm not sure if that happened last election. Did you see all of the odds? You could have bet on it. I did not bet on it, though. But if I was betting on it, I would have. What'd you bet?
I often bet with my children all the time.
Do you pay them up?
You can't do that. I do. I always pay up.
Dawson, can I get a tiny bit more self of my voice in my ears? Just a bit more. I think because what it came down to for me, following both their campaigns, I followed them both pretty closely, is there just wasn't much substance to Kamala's campaign. If I'm being brutally honest, there was not, if any substance. They made the same mistake, in my opinion, that Hillary did in 2016, running on Trump hate, running on demonization of that. And you know they're getting desperate when they start pulling out tactics like Hitler and comparisons and all that stuff.
You and I met with I was going to say Leighton, David Leis, and one of the things he mentioned was that a tactic of desperation is when a political party starts to try to marginalize or demonize the way that they were to Trump with the Madison Square Garden meetup, where they were comparing it on no basis whatsoever except for the arena. The arena was their tie. In 1940-something, Hitler had a gathering at MSG, and so did Trump. And that was it. And they just continued to pander to that crowd. And David Leis said that's a classic tactic, that they're losing grip, and now they're trying to just hang on to their base. And I was like, really? He goes, absolutely. You can find it. It's a pattern. It's a pattern that repeats. And so that's all they were talking about in the last week.
I think we'll get into this a lot more with Leighton, and I'm sure Stockwell and David later. But one of the things that was reassuring to me at the end of the day was that politics, at least at this election, came down to political issues. It came down to what Trump was running on, right? Inflation is hurting the everyday American. They're having a hard time living. You've got his commitments to bringing up war and wars, that how they've been happening, and under him it didn't. He talked about crime, right? He talked about issues that really mattered to people. At the end of the day, I think that you have your everyday working American, your middle class that was just pushed too far to where it was almost like a revolt. We're pissed off. This is too much, and they showed up.
Well, to see that type of landslide, I want to shout out a few other people here. We got Carrie Christensen, welcome. Good to have you guys there. Where you guys? Let us know where you guys are watching from too. Love to see your comments on that. We've got some great guests lined up here. We got Leighton Grey. He's actually in the queue. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready to talk to him soon.
When's he coming on? Andrew, just let us know whenever they're ready.
He's ready.
Okay,
we have him like in 2-3 minutes here. But I'm going to be asking your guys' questions to Leighton. So send me the questions. I'm watching them in real time.
Do it now, guys. Ask questions. Leighton's got a great mind, great thoughts. Get him in early so we can.
Chris is on here. Sherry, Louise, Justin, my brother, my niece and nephew, more of my family. Where's your family? What's going on?
Where's my family? My wife is watching Gabriel and your kids.
She's not watching Real Citizen, though, is she?
She's watching your kids, too. So please keep watching the children. My mom and dad probably don't know it's on. I should text them.
Amanda, Carrie, awesome. All right, I think we should jump over to our good friend.
Yeah, let's bring, if he's ready, if he's in the queue, let's bring him on.
Leighton.
Why do we wait? Bring him on, Andrea, or
Hello,
Leighton.
Sir. How are you doing? Oh, I can't hear him.
1 second, Leighton. We need to get you some volume in our ears.
There you go. We got you.
How's that?
Excellent.
Oh, great to see you, man. How are you?
What a joy and an honor and a pleasure it is to finally be on your show. I've been watching it for these many months and watching you guys and your conversations. And so, great to be here. Thanks for having me on and including me in the discussion.
No, thank you for joining us. It's an honor. We watch your show as well, and I love to use your show as an incredible balance for understanding and logic on big issues. And so for our audience, make sure you guys check out Leighton's show. make sure you guys go there for hot button issues because Leighton covers it all. He goes after it, and it's fantastic. So welcome. Good to have you.
Great to see you, man.
My son uses my show as a sleep aid. I don't recommend that.
Well,
Hey, at least he's watching it.
I was going to make a joke, but I was going to say I plagiarized your show. What does Leighton think on this topic? And
For sure. That's actually a great way to put it.
I mean that as a compliment to you. Is that the program is awesome, and guys, he's very active on X. You'll see him lots in terms of his thoughts about what's going on in Alberta, in our great province here. What's happening in Canada? Obviously, he touches on worldwide topics too. Yeah. So, Leighton, I guess as we dive into it, I just want what's your initial thoughts coming off of last night? Did you stay up to watch? You've had maybe 24 hours to digest. Just what are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Well, I was listening to what Jeremy said the other day, and I had my doubts, like him, about whether or not the Republicans would pull it off. But, as it happens to the two of you, I'm sure, God intervenes. And it just so happened that last week I was in Henderson, Nevada, which is right outside of Las Vegas. I was down there visiting my son who's playing hockey down there.
Very cool.
And as I looked out my window, and there was a guy walking by the hotel who had orange hair, a big red tie, and a blue suit. And I thought, that guy is dressed like Donald Trump. And then he was next to somebody who was wearing a MAGA hat. And then I saw many other people walking behind them with MAGA hats, and they were all going to a rally across the street. And Donald Trump was there. And I got to go over there and have the experience of being in an arena with 20,000 people.
Wow.
And this is what changed my mind. This is what made me understand that what's happened in the United States is more than just an election victory. It's a grassroots conservative movement. I witnessed hundreds of people holding hands and praying that Donald Trump would win. I listened to a family who talked about how their child had been kidnapped and killed by two men who were violent sex offenders that stole a young child out of a woman's home and took her down the street and then raped her and killed her. And the raw emotion that I experienced there at that rally, I left there saying, wow, there's just no way that he can lose. And then the other thing I noticed, I was listening to what you said, David, about the differences between 2016 comparisons to 2016 and 2020. The one thing about Donald Trump that people underestimate is that he learns and he adapts. And in 2020, when he lost, I thought part of the reason why he lost is because he made the election all about him. But this time, he built a coalition. He brought in RFK Jr. He brought in Elon Musk. He had Vivek Ramaswamy campaigning for him. Tulsi Gabbard was there to get some of the female vote. And so you weren't just voting for Donald Trump, and he shared some of the limelight. He got those people out campaigning for him. And in the end, of course, he got the big endorsements from people like Joe Rogan. And that really seemed to carry a lot more weight than all of the celebrity endorsements for Kamala. But I think I think the connection with the Christian conservative movement, which is very clear, and also the building of this coalition, I think those two things actually were decisive for him in this victory.
That's an awesome point you said, because those guys that Trump surrounded himself with, if you look at their history, a lot of those guys you can call them classic liberals, or were traditionally, like obviously RFK being a lifelong Democrat. You have Elon, who traditionally has said that the left has left me behind, right? You have Joe Rogan, who has been that. And these guys are people, Ben Shapiro, who was staunchly against Trump in 2016 when he was running. And now these guys are surrounding and lifting because they've seen this crazy shift that's happened in politics, where it's no longer a proper balance of left and right in the sense of democracy. Let's have these ideas joust against each other. May the best one wins. It's become the ideologies have been. So it's just interesting to see the people surround themselves around Trump, which you're right.
The other thing that was very stark to me, stark contrast between Canadian and American politics, is you mentioned RFK, who I think you could fairly describe as a small L liberal, lifetime
That's
Democrat, historic Democrat family.
Yep.
But I recently heard him. You guys might have seen this. He gave a speech in front of tens of thousands of people. That was, of course, broadcast on social media before many, many millions of people, in which he described a prayer that he prayed to God during COVID-19 for a leader like Donald Trump who would come along. I don't hear anyone, any political leaders in Canada bringing God into the conversation. And as you guys know, I talk a lot about on our show about God needs to be at the head of the state. In a properly constructed state, if you look at what's in the Old Testament, God gave us the clear recipe for a properly functioning state. And secularism has drawn us away from that. And really, we're kind of lost in the wilderness right now in Canada. And I think that in order to restore sanity and to restore some sense of dignity and human flourishing and freedom and prosperity and abundance, all of which is right there in the Bible, we need to have a true conservative movement in Canada that talks about God, that talks about putting God back at the head of the state, talks about our foundational Western cultural values, with the bedrock of which are Judeo-Christian morality and faith. And I think that this is something that was brought into the Republican side. And as I say, people can call me crazy, call me the Bible-thumping lawyer, but I happen to think if God was on anyone's side in that election, it wasn't the Democrats.
Interesting take. I think that you look at what is the bedrock of these countries. And for most of Western civilization, it is the principles that are founded upon God's word. It is Judeo-Christian principles that have come forth. And it's an interesting thing to see how much that has been adopted back into Trump's campaigning as well.
Yeah, it has
and
been.
Walking through and I think that's what you've seen, the rise with the voter turnout and how important these issues actually have been. I think we've seen them being pushed so far that, okay, we'll put up with this, we'll put up with this, we'll put up with this. But now that it's gone too far, there's been this, it's almost like the revenge of the middle class. And that's a great take.
Well, and I've heard a lot of Christians, like something I've heard Christians say, because obviously we're very attached to the Christian world in everything we do. And I've heard a lot of the Christians say, yeah, what Trump was saying is just rhetoric. It's just words. But that my response to that is he's accountable for what he says. And if he's making promises to the Christian community and not delivering, that's a notch against his name that he's not following up on. And so for what promises he makes it's very interesting to see that he strategically seemed to kind of go after the Christian audience. And I saw many photos of him being prayed over and kneeled over. And I'm not sure if you saw Andrew Womack's photo on his Instagram, but like some of the largest pastors in all of the United States all gathered around and prayed over him. And so it was very, very intentional. You could see that he went for the Christian crowd this time and made some bold claims, even for his own personal faith, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's a very different approach. Just like you said, Canada, there's nothing like that. Nothing at all.
Leighton, got a question for you from the audience. It says here, some conservative commentators are basking in the joy of liberal tears, but instead of adding to the divisiveness, what are some things that conservatives can do to promote unity with liberals or the other side?
That's from Justin.
Well, I think that when you, again, coming back to the Old Testament, and when you look at God provides a recipe for a properly functioning state. And in that recipe, if you look at, for example, we were just talking about the United States. United States might be the best example of this. I was doing some research recently for a commentary I'm writing for my show, and I came across a prayer that was written by George Washington when he was only 20 years old. This is before the United States was even founded. This is like 1752. And the level of devoutness of his faith was astonishing. And I think that in that is a lesson, and that is that, in Judeo-Christian values, what we have when we put God at the head of the state, and we have that as our foundational philosophy, it makes it uniquely possible for everyone else to be involved. And to answer the question, though, how do we fix it? How do we change it? My own view of conservatism is perhaps more fundamentalist than other people's conservative. Some people might say that, for example, that the United Conservative Party in Alberta is conservative. I don't think they are. I think they're liberal in both their fiscal and their social policy. My brand of conservatism is Roger Scruton brand of conservatism, which talks about faith, connection to community, limited government, the focus on the family, and creating an environment. And this is the true role of government. And this comes back to the Old Testament, to be a servant of the people. You know, Jesus, our Savior, was a servant leader. Okay, that's right. These are the footsteps that we walk in as leaders. Whatever you're leading, that's your example. And what I think what we need in Canada is more people who understand that. People like George Washington understood this in his bones, that was the standard that he was walking in if he was going to be a leader of men, whether he was a soldier, a general, or a president. And unfortunately, you know, we have a situation where the lust for power has really taken over. And that has infected our leaders. And of course, the manifestation of that is that, unlike Christian conservative, which calls for taking responsibility, for getting involved in your communities, in your churches, and having a spirit of loving your neighbor, that has been lost in Canada. We used to have a very Christian society. Unfortunately, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in 1982 is largely responsible for destroying that. And Canada finds itself in being a very secular society that I think is estranged from God in a lot of ways. This goes right down to our communities, and that has led to the immiseration of Canadians, in my opinion. I think that the pathway to sanity, the pathway to restore our communities, to destroy some dignity to our lives, is turning back to Christ. That's my particular view.
Totally, and I'm not sure if you experienced this when you were down in the States, but when I was in Montana a couple months ago, one thing that I saw everywhere I looked was American flags and Jesus is Lord or Jesus is King, and everywhere. I could not believe that how often I was seeing it. It was just such a stark contrast to Canada, where if you maybe see a Jesus fish here, maybe you might see one a day if you're lucky. And I'm obviously a faith-believing Christian man, and so you see it, you notice those things, and so. But in the States, I could not believe how it was everywhere. It was such a difference. It was pretty radical. I'm not sure if you saw that down where you were.
Yeah, it really is remarkable. I mean, I did a study again for one of the commentaries for my show, and I found that the most quoted source of the founding fathers, by far, was the Bible. And you know, people don't understand this, don't appreciate how deeply embedded, you know, Christian the Christian faith is in the American idea, in the American founding, and it's in Canada too.
Yeah.
Make no mistake, that is our tradition. And we've strayed from that. You know, there's a great temptation in the world, and we've strayed from that, but there's a way to restore it. And what I would hope, what people would see, Canadians watching what's happening with the MAGA movement, that they would be inspired by it and understand that the people didn't just go to the ballot box yesterday and vote and change everything. What you saw was the culmination of a movement, a lot of hard work, a lot of door knocking, a lot of you know, trying to change people's ideas about things, waking people up to what's going on in our schools with SOGI, you know, the wokeness, all the stuff you guys talk about on your show so eloquently. That's the stuff that the MAGA movement is so much against and has been fighting. And really what the MAGA movement is designed to bring America back to its original essence, which is founded in those Judeo-Christian biblical values.
So for those people who are skeptical of Trump and they see him for his for maybe his big grandeur, his big statements, some of the things that maybe he's got loose lips at times, and generally there's obviously half the country that, not truly half, but there's a lot of people that dislike what he is. What would your advice be to them in terms of, you're talking about this movement, this Make America Great Again movement, what he represented, people that's gone around him, people that support him. People might say it's common sense, but you're bringing it to a little bit of a different level there. What would your advice be to them to try to maybe see around the lens they've been viewing him through?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to quote C.S. Lewis here, famous Christian author, who said that we should never put our faith in one man. And actually, he was quoting Jesus, as you know, because at one point Jesus has said, Master, you're good. He says, no, there's no such thing as a good man. Only the Father is good. Yeah. And we have to remember, Trump is not a good man. There's no such thing as a good man. Yeah. There's only one good man, and they hung him on a cross 2,000 years ago. Yeah. So we have to be careful to create, we don't want to create a monster here. I think that that the goodness, the part that we should be looking for, is, and the measuring stick for Mr. Trump, which I think he's proven himself by and large to uphold, is to what extent is he a servant leader? Is he there for the people? One of the unique things about Trump is that he's actually so wealthy and so powerful that his life would actually be much simpler, much more comfortable, even much more lavish if he were not the president. Yeah. I mean, the house he has in Mar-a-Lago makes the White House, look like a dump, folks. Yeah. This guy is incredibly rich. He doesn't need politics. Yeah. And so why is he there? I mean, I think the answer to that question is, I think he has a very clear idea that he sees himself as being the man of the hour. He feels that he has a mission, that he has a job to do, he has a vocation, and that's why he's there. That, to me, that is what draws me to him as a leader, is that he sees himself as being a servant of the people. Quite the opposite of the man we have as our prime minister in Ottawa, but that's a different conversation.
Well, I think that's what's so attractive.
What I would say to people is, don't put too much faith in one man, but judge him according to the standard. And the standard is he a servant leader? That's what I would say to people.
For sure, because to me, that's what's so attractive about the idea of Trump, is that he's not a lifetime politician. When he was running against Hillary, you didn't know what Hillary was actually trying to say or what was real or not. It was all politics at the highest level that could possibly be. And with Trump, yes, sometimes the rhetoric he speaks, you're just like, oh yeah, whatever. It's ridiculous sometimes, but at least it was raw, it was real, and it was you weren't worried about what was secretive or not. I'd love to ask you, what are your thoughts? David and I were looking at this 2020 election results with 80 million. What is your take from a lawyer's perspective? One of the things we were looking at was this graph that David has.
I can pull it up here.
And he's going to show it. But I'm going to get the numbers slightly off.
I'm not sure if Leighton will see it, but we'll describe it to you.
I saw this today.
You saw it?
You did.
With the 80 million, so you see like roughly 40 million Democratic votes, 45 million, 50 million, then all of a sudden 2020.
Andrew, what's the code again for the screen? I'm trying to connect. Sorry to interrupt your thought, but it's 3016.
4298.
Thank you.
All of a sudden, when it gets to the last election, it's record Joe Biden, 81 million record votes, where it's going, okay, if there's anything that's fishy, that's the first real thing. Because I've heard every conspiracy you can imagine, and so every one of us have, about the integrity of that election and Trump's stance on it, and that's maybe something I'd love to ask you about too. But that number is very fishy and very strange, and I don't know if you got it there to show.
Yeah, it's on the screen, Andrew. You can take it if you want to throw it up there.
Yeah, so this graph here, maybe take it full screen so our viewers can see it better.
I'm on my iPhone.
But this view here, we see that blue bar right there is 80. That's Joe Biden's election results. Like Donald Trump did, they say, over 900 rallies, and got the landslide he got. He won the House, he won the Senate, he won the Electoral College. And And look what Joe Biden did apparently in 2020.
Well, just to
from his basement.
yeah. Well, Leighton, just to give you a little
He didn't campaign. He didn't campaign.
a little extra numbers on this. I went back to 04, and you look at John Kerry in 04, 59 million votes. Obama 08 and 12, 69 and 65 million votes. You had Hillary Clinton at 16, 65 million votes, and you had Kamala Harris yesterday, 66 million votes, but then you have Joe Biden in 2020 at 81. So that's approximately 15 million votes that have disappeared. So for me, it showed just one of two things. It's either there's 15 million Democrats that just did not show up because they hated the last 4 years of what was happening, or they were made up. But anyways,
and
your thoughts, Leighton?
Where did they come from the previous elections?
Well, there's a few explanations. One is that there was cheating, but of course there's cheating in every election. People should recognize this.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think part of the aberration of the 2020 election is that the voting machines were new, and they really were. There was an undiscovered country there. They really were not regulated, and what you saw leading up to the election. This time in 2024, over the past 6 months or so, is the Republicans did a very good job at the state level of regulating out some of the voting machines and really being on top of this. There's a famous quotation that I read recently where FDR was talking to Lyndon Johnson, FDR when he was president, and Lyndon Johnson had lost a senatorial election, and FDR said, "Well, you lost because you forgot to stand on the ballot box, right?" Which is to say, you can campaign, you can run a beautiful campaign, but what matters is how and who counts the votes. And so the way that those votes were counted, I think, raises a serious question about the validity of that. And then, of course, the other answer that it may be, I mean, coming back to my earlier comment and giving the voting system the benefit of the doubt, it may be that Donald Trump, because of the way he campaigned in 2020, was such a polarizing figure. And casting our minds back to 2020, if you remember what it was like, hard to believe it was 5 years ago now, guys, almost, since the pandemic was declared. Wow. But you cast your mind back to that, and people were so polarized in their thinking that may have spurred people to vote in much higher numbers.
Yep, for sure.
One of the problems is how do you get people out to vote? But I'm actually going to have Dinesh D'Souza on Grey Matter, an upcoming episode.
Oh, awesome.
And he created some interesting documentaries. I don't know if you saw these where, he actually caught people on film stuffing ballot boxes and stealing votes or stealing ballots. And I want to ask him this very question to see, well, I know what he's going to say. He said that, that the election was stolen. But it certainly does beg the question: well, what happened in 2020? How could there be such an aberrant number of votes there, not just for Biden but also for Trump?
It's definitely an outlier, which is interesting. That's gonna be. I'm looking forward to that. So shout out to that show for all the audience watching. Make sure to be watching it. Dinesh D'Souza's got great thoughts as well. Did you have a thought you're going to say?
One last thing I was going to say to you, and we've got another guest in the queue we got to get to here soon, Leighton. But one thing I wanted to ask you was, do you think one of the stances Trump took when he was when the 2020 was declared for Joe Biden was that it's argued whether he conceded or not? And do you think the stance that he did take is partially the reason he won now, that he kind of never really fully laid down and died? Do you think that had to do with the victory we saw yesterday?
Wow, what a great question. I actually had not considered that, but I think you may be onto something, Jeremy, because it certainly feeds into the whole mythology of Trump, the image that he wants to present. And when I say image, I don't want to disparage it because, you guys, I know you guys saw that video of him getting shot in the head.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And him getting up and shouting, you can't fake that.
No, absolutely.
I can't say that, if that had been me, honestly, folks, I probably would have kept down and not want to get shot again. But it certainly ties into the whole mythology of Trump. And I think Elon Musk, for one, really believes in the sincerity of Donald Trump, that he is this guy who is just relentless, a fighter, and somebody who will fight for the people. And wow, what an attractive image that is. You think about David, the stories in the Bible. Think about Moses. Think about, of course, Jesus. I mean, think about those. I mean, I don't want to compare Donald Trump to Jesus, but what I'm saying is standing up against adversity, standing up in the face of overwhelming odds, that is a very intoxicating metaphor for human beings, especially for a freedom-loving country like the United States.
I want to ask one more question, Leighton, too. And I want to ask you this because I also want to ask our other guests this as well. And when it comes to the economy, the Canadian-U.S. relation, we know Trump is a U.S. first president. He is very nationalistic in terms of bringing jobs back, bringing manufacturing, productivity. He's about USA first, which I personally I'm a fan of. I think our world would be stronger if every leader put their country first, and then we kind of got this other side away. I'm going to play a clip, Andrea. I'm going to restart it here in just a second. So Pierre Poilievre today in the House. I'm going to, Leighton, I'm not sure if you can hear this, but basically what he's saying, there's no one else.
I watched this earlier
Okay,
today.
I'll play it here. We're going to play it right here for 1 second.
Yeah.
Who would more favor 1 cents a liter in Canada than this Prime Minister? Right. Well, maybe there's one person.
Right.
I think perhaps President Trump wouldn't mind, because of course it would mean our trucking companies, our factories, our mines will all shut down and go south of the border. They will pay zero carbon tax. Mr. Speaker, we have enough to worry about with President Trump potentially imposing tariffs on Canadian companies. Why would our government impose tariffs on ourselves?
Maybe summarize it here because it was skipping a little bit.
Well, the summary is talking about our carbon tax that we have that's continually going up by our own government. President Trump loves the word tariff. He's actually said that himself. He loves the word tariff because it is going to help bring back all of these things to make a U.S. robust economy better for Americans.
And he's saying, why would anyone stay in Canada if you're going to be punished here and have a tariff locally if you can go down where there's no tariffs?
And we're already losing a lot of great workers. We're also losing trades. We're using educated people to the States where they have lower taxes, better quality of life. Their money goes further. That's a serious problem Canada is facing right now. So the question I have for you, Leighton, a President Trump, Prime Minister Trudeau relationship, what is your thoughts on the Canadian economy and the effect on our dollar, on our economy, oil and gas? The floor is yours.
Yeah, this is, again, a really great question. And in fact, I was just talking about this with my law partner, Brad Sinclair, about this very question. But first of all, I want to say, Pierre Poilievre, whatever you think about his politics, he must be one of the most brilliant orators that we've seen in Canadian politics for a very long time. He's such a captivating speaker. He really is brilliant. And I admire his ability to speak in public very, very much. And I think he's put his finger on something here that is very, very important. The jury is out about what impact a Trump presidency is going to have on Canada economically. On one hand, he said he's promised to open up the Keystone Pipeline, which is ready to go on day one. That's going to be good for Canada in the short run. Yeah. But he's also said that he's going to ramp up oil production, domestic oil production, and try to restore the United States to, energy independence, he calls it. That's going to impact Alberta oil, for sure, which is going to impact the entire country. So if we get $40 a barrel oil in Alberta a year from now, there's going to be a lot of pain in this country at the same time that we're dealing with this emissions cap. Yeah. But I think in the short run, you're right. There is going to be some pain in the short run for Canada in that sense. However, I'm going to make an opinion here. People can say what they like about it. I happen to think that the party is over for Justin Trudeau. For the longest time, Canada has been sort of Robin Williams, the late comedian, once called Canada like a loft or a loft apartment over a really good party. Michael Knowles calls Canada America's top hat. So funny. We're kind of an afterthought to them. However, what the federal government in particular has been up to in this country has raised a situation that has not existed for a very long time, perhaps since 1812, where the geopolitical situation in Canada actually poses a severe threat to the safety and security of America. And so I think what we're going to see with this Trump presidency is we're going to see the United States taking a much more sincere interest in the domestic politics of Canada. I think that Americans, the American government, you've seen some people in Congress and the Senate talking about this recently. They're very concerned about Chinese interference in our public institutions, in our elections. They're very concerned about foreign interference of India. They're very concerned about Justin Trudeau antagonizing Russia. There are Russian military installations and Chinese ones in the Arctic. This is a very dangerous moment for Canada. And what happens to Canada, is a severe threat to the United States. And so I think that for that reason, I think Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to take a more sincere interest in Canada. And I think this is why some of their major commentaries, people like Tucker Carlson, have been visiting Canada and talking about Canada a lot more. Notice how many times Joe Rogan has mentioned and talked about Canada and Justin Trudeau on his program. Bill Maher has talked about Canada on his program. Canada is much more a topic of discussion now because of the behavior of our Liberal government. And I think that's a good thing. I think that that's going to prevent some of the abuses of power that we're seeing in Ottawa right now. And I think that in the long run is going to be good for the country.
Appreciate the thoughts. I very much appreciate those thoughts, because that's going to be something we'll be watching closely as this continues to go on. We aren't in the best economical position as Canada, certainly within our history. We could be better, one could say. Leighton, thank you so much for joining us, man. We so appreciate you taking up some of our airtime and giving us a chance to relax a little. We're just sitting back learning from you, which is awesome to be a part of.
Well, thanks for finally bringing me on the show. It's been such a pleasure talking with you guys. It's such a joy to talk with you, and best of luck with everything that you do. We're a family at the Miracle Channel. I'm very pleased and honored and blessed to be a part of it. So thank you guys both very much, and God bless.
We will have you again on soon. God bless you, man. Thank you, Leighton.
Check out Grey Matter, everybody who's watching right now. Go look it up right after this. Return to Reason, Grey Matter.
That's awesome. Talk soon.
Take care. Thank you.
Man, that's some good thoughts.
Oh, for sure. He's brilliant.
Because that's something, I want to show another clip here, just as we're going to take some time, you and I, is that this came out recently today from our Prime Minister. And
do you have it? Because before you,
I have it right here.
I want to ask. I just want to shout out Andrew G, Diane, Sheldon, Sherry. Thanks for watching, guys. I want to do a draw. What can we give away? Should we give away the Titanic?
No, dude, we can't give away the Titanic.
Should we give away a Titanic? I want to give away something for anybody who hits like. Anybody who hits like. And
no, this is what we're going to do.
What are we going to do?
We're going to do the first person. I'm holding the Titanic.
I don't want to give it away.
No, we're going to get another one, and we'll give away another one. The first person that can actually write in the comments why we have this Titanic
there you go.
sitting on our table with an iceberg beside it. If you can tell us why and where it comes from.
Your best rendition as to why we have a Titanic and an iceberg.
The first one who's got a good answer we'll pick, and we'll make sure we send
And you got to hit like. I want to see those likes go up. They've already gone up by 4. Thank you. There's 66 people watching right now.
So I want to see 66 likes, y'all.
Let's go. We got David Leis queued up, and you had a video queued up, correct?
We do.
Awesome. We got David Leis in a minute. Not yet.
Before we go there, I want to show this because this is on the.
Come on, people. Titanic reasons.
Am I connected still? I'm not.
I want to give this Titanic away.
No one knows. Maybe no one saw where it came from originally.
Make it up.
Okay, here, listen to this. Here we go.
All right, let's see it. I don't see it anywhere.
Last week, it was 20 degrees on Halloween. Gone are the days where we used to have fights over wearing a winter coat and ruining a great costume. Our climate is changing, and we have to act. The good news is Canada's already turned the corner. Individual actions and investments we've made in green technology and clean energy means we're bringing emissions down. But there's still one industry that's polluting more, and that means it's the biggest opportunity to make a huge difference. The oil and gas sector is responsible for 1/3 of our emissions in Canada, so we're bringing in a cap on that pollution. Now, it's not a cap on production. It's not a cap on earnings. It's a cap and trade system that allows us to limit and reduce over time emissions from that sector. That sector is making record profits. And there's already technology that can capture the carbon emissions from the oil and gas production. And we want these companies to invest in that technology or invest in new technologies like it to bring down emissions. We know that everyone needs to do their part. And this cap is about making sure that the oil and gas sector does its part as well.
I wanted to show that because that kind of flows out of our
pandering.
Our last
virtue signaling. What's another word?
There's a lot of things. It's definitely a lot of things. Is
falsehood.
Our conversation with Leighton, the last question talking about the economy. We know the oil and gas sector in Canada is obviously a very important part of what Canada is. We are one of the richest oil and gas nations in the world in terms of the opportunity that we have within our country, right? Except we have been landlocked. I've been saying this for years, is that the eastern part of Canada does not even take our western oil. We'd rather ship that from countries in the Middle East who have got next to zero standards in terms of how they're producing. Canada emits less than 1% of the world's emissions. Climate change, and we know climate is changing.
Much less than 1%.
It's up for debate whether we're the ones that are causing it as mankind. And it's definitely, probably not up for debate that Canada does not have a significant role in that. Yeah. And what we've been doing is we've been landlocking, hurting ourselves. And now this is a continuation of this idea of basically hurting the Canadian economy for the sake of climate change. And then when you have a man like President Trump who's going to come into office, and when he was president, U.S. was the largest oil producer in the world. They ramped up really quick. That's going to happen again. So for me, there's obviously some...
And he's also cherry picking a day, Halloween, and one temperature reading on one day to make a giant claim. Like... Yeah, it's just pandering.
One part of the country. I was in Winnipeg. You were in Calgary. It was not 20 degrees.
Ridiculous.
I think it was maybe 7 degrees for us.
So
if you look back through history, you'll find other things too. That's the problem with this kind of thing. Okay, do we got some comments coming in?
Yeah, we do. How are we going to choose them though?
You choose. Who's the closest?
Are we going to put them in a draw?
No, just pick. We don't know who they are. Just pick.
How the best answer? Here, I'll give. Okay, so all right, here we go. We got David Leis queued up. Do we have him ready to go soon?
If David's ready, you can bring him on. He'll just hang with us for a second.
This is the answer. I'm going to play the answer. Okay? Ready?
Did you find it?
On our video.
Oh, yeah. It's on our video.
To see who watches the intros. All right. Thanks for the compliment on the hoodie, Chris.
All Canadian families, we are on the Titanic. The iceberg hasn't hit yet, so we're not sinking. If we don't shift course, that iceberg is coming for us.
I'm not planning on
Boom. There it is. That's the reason, everybody.
Who's the closest?
That's the reason. There's some good answers. Katie's pretty good. The way the country is going, we see at the tip of the iceberg of where we're going. And if we don't do anything, we don't want to sing. I think she meant sink. Canada is sinking, man. I don't want to swim. There's another great answer. Canada is sinking. Ice sits underwater. Canada is the Titanic heading for disaster. David, Trump will opt. Oh, no, that's not it. We're on a boat trying to avoid the tip of the iceberg. Don't want to see. Yeah, I think the best answer is Katya.
Awesome, Katya.
We'll have one of our producers connect with you, Katya. If you can, how are we going to connect? I'm not sure.
It's up to Paul. Paul or Andrea, they'll figure it out how to connect to Katya, and we're going to send you a Titanic.
Let's make sure Katya liked it, because if she liked it, she's disqualified.
I just saw a
there
like
you go,
on.
29.
She just
28.
liked it now.
There you go. Let's like that video, hit share, subscribe. We're working on getting David Leis on. We had Stockwell Dave let us know that he's got a scheduling issue, but I also just texted him.
Should I text him too?
I'm going to see if I can get him to change it.
Say, dude, you can't bail on Citizen.
I know. So we'll see if we can continue to get him on. But David Leis, we're getting queued up here.
Stock is a friend. We'll definitely get him back on if he can't make it tonight. Something came up. I like this comment. David FL, I think it is. Trump will opt out of Paris Accords again. Get out of the WHO again. Watch for him to reduce participation in NATO and off anything to do with the UN and U.S. sovereignty.
Did you hear? I heard today that Netanyahu fired his... can anyone confirm for me? Sorry, this is broken. But Netanyahu fired his something of defense this morning.
I did not know that.
And they think he did it because Trump got elected. I've never seen. Someone told me I didn't see any titles, nothing. If anyone in the comments can confirm, Google search. I'd love to hear if that's true. What he did or didn't do, that would be very interesting to find out. Because if that's true, that's wild. Which means he's got incredible confidence, I think, on what Trump's going to do for the whole Palestine, Iran, Israel conflict.
Well, Trump is obviously a staunch supporter
very much
of Israel.
Defense minister,
the embassy, right, from Tel Aviv
David
to Jerusalem.
Tells us he fired his defense minister.
All right,
this
David
morning.
FL's all over it.
Yeah, there you
and
go.
it's his first time. Welcome, dude. Appreciate having you. I want to just give a couple thoughts on. We'll get back to Canada. David Leis will be able to bring on a lot, but I was reflecting a bit this morning, and as I was in Winnipeg and came back to Calgary today, and I was reflecting, reading on the plane a bit about what this means, and it was interesting. I actually I said this earlier, I think, to one of our producers. I actually think it was probably one of the easier elections to figure out.
Yeah,
you had 4 years of Trump, and you had 4 years of Biden/Harris. Harris is obviously second in command, and you can argue about how much impact that position actually have, but you got an idea of what she stood for, and you had an idea of what she could have changed.
Yeah.
With Donald Trump, you saw what he did for 4 years, and it's literally A or B. Which one do you like? I understand in 2016 when people were unsure of voting for Donald Trump or what's he going to do? He talks big and he's got all these crazy things that he says and he's not a politician. What does he know? A lot more unsuredness in terms of what can come into it. But now you can look back and see, look what Donald Trump actually did. Yeah, he's got some big talk and he's got some things that he throws off the cut. And he definitely BS's a lot for sure. Mm-hmm. But you can see a track record. And then when you look at Kamala and Joe Biden's presidency, you look at what the country is. And a couple of things I thought of is that it's actually what it is. It's like a celebration of meritocracy. Is that you aren't your race.
Well said.
You're not your gender. You're not this. You're not that. You are what you do, what you earn, how much work you put into it. It's a celebration of that. You have this middle class that has been completely thrown aside for years, right? And it's a rejection of this postmodernist idea. It's a rejection of bad fiscal policies. There's a rejection of these ideas like DEI that is completely overtaken institutions in the U.S. and has been destroying it from the inside out.
Yep.
It's a rejection of biological men beating women in the Olympics and taking medals from them.
I love how you said that, merit-based, which is refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
There's a couple questions. Are we assuming NATO is good? That's a question I want to reserve for Mr. Leis. Are we assuming NATO is good? One question that Leo Yu asked is, does the reopening of the Keystone Pipeline help the Canadian economy? Well, I just quickly looked up stats of what the pipeline would do, and if the pipeline's open, it brings 830,000 barrels of crude oil from Alberta to the refineries of the United States. The amount of trade that's just radical. How much that would bolster down our economy in such a good way. And it says approximately $1.3 billion project has been invested into the pipeline already.
Okay.
So we cannot waste that level of investment. We got Mr. David Leis.
Is he here?
In the queue right now.
Yes.
David, thank you for joining us, Mr. David Leis. How are you?
Well, it's a pleasure to see you guys. And if there's a little bit of background noise, it's because I'm in an airport. So please bear with me.
Which airport are you in right now?
I'm actually in Calgary.
What? I've been seeing a lot of you lately, my friend. I don't feel compelled we have to see each other this trip.
You have a poppy on. I forgot to get our poppies. Daryl, can you track down our poppies? That'd be great. Sorry, it's a little ADD there.
Mine's on my jacket.
I forgot my poppy. I want to get my poppy on.
Yeah, we should
Make sure you guys go buy poppies and support
100%.
poppies. They're hard to find, and we must continue to wear poppies. You know, my dad served in the armed forces. My grandpa also was in war in the war. We cannot let this fade down under. Sorry, that's my little plug for that. But Mr. Leis, our first question comes to you from our viewers, and one person said what's your thoughts on NATO? Is it good? Does it need to go? Do we think Trump's going to kill it? And then I want to ask you your thoughts on the results.
Well, that's a terrific question. I would say that the short answer is NATO is a very important alliance. The purpose, though, or how it's functioned, has changed, and there's quite a bit of research on that issue. in the sense that NATO is entered into different realms of, frankly, work to control and manage information. And so NATO has, I think, needs to be refocused. That would be my short answer. And I think NATO's lost its bearings as it's become pushed to expand endlessly. I remember in 1992 specifically, during the age of President George W. Bush, who, as the walls came down of the former Soviet Union in that period, the temptation was to expand NATO far beyond its kind of traditional boundaries. And I think they made some mistakes, and one of which was more recently, as they've signaled to Ukraine that they could join NATO. And that was always seen as crossing the boundaries. So I think NATO, to put a long story short, needs to be refocused. Everything that you understand about Donald Trump is a deep commitment to alliances, including NATO. But the challenge right now is that there's a lot of freeloaders.
Yeah.
And we're one of them. Canada does not meet its commitments in different ways, unfortunately. And so this is the problem. And I think he's signaling, as he had right from 2016 at that term, that people need to get with the program. If they make these commitments, they need to keep to them. So I think that's the bottom line.
That's why we love having you on the show.
Yeah, I know you're brilliant.
What is overall thoughts, David? The floor is yours in terms of reflecting on Trump's pretty much his sweep from last night. It was a convincing victory all the way from the start to finish. It just never slowed with momentum. You've had 24 hours. What's your general thoughts so far? Do you feel optimistic? Are you feeling pessimistic?
I'm feeling quite cautiously optimistic. I think it represents many things. Many would argue it represents a kind of a redawning of the United States for many reasons. And one of them is, I would say, like right off the top, I think it's very interesting. I mean, you have to look at so many details around the election about why people really did vote. I mean, there's some really basic themes around affordability, the economy, open borders, and a myriad of other issues. But it represents an extraordinary coalition and, frankly, an extraordinary reverse takeover of the GOP, the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And it's really stunning if you look at this history, as I've been watching very closely the last, 8 years, 10 years, as there's been a kind of a representation of the GOP representing working people more, and those people spoke up, and I think it's a repudiation, pardon me, of kind of power, the power establishment, the elites that have done such a nasty job governing the United States in terms of endless wars, bad inflationary policies, endless spending. I mean, the list goes on and on. It has been a train wreck. And I think that this is the opportunity for a course correction that will have a profound impact on the course of the United States. And I would be optimistic. Why? Because I think he has around him in a Trump administration, and certainly I'm aware of a number of them, I think are a very capable team. And I think he's learned a lot of lessons as a relative Washington outsider, obviously, who had no electoral office prior to 2016. It's really a stunning story.
Yeah.
They're coming in as an experienced and much stronger team, and I think they have a very clear focus on what they're going to do. So it's just a stunning victory, and it's not a surprise. I think I would reference my favorite pollster. I think I mentioned this before, is Rasmussen.
Yep.
I mean, there's others. But there's a lot of noise that was kind of just total bunk. The race was not that close. It was a stunning victory because it wasn't just simply all 7 swing states. They won the Senate. They won the White House.
Yep.
Looks like they've got the House.
That's right.
And they've got the popular vote. And also as significant, you have, if you look at every one of those congressional districts, you have a whole new crop of significant new actors that actually get the program.
That's interesting. If you had a wish list of what winning a U.S. election would look like, it would be last night, checking every single box from the popular vote, the Electoral College. You've got the House, you've got the Senate. It's a sweep that he had, and I always thought at some point there's going to be a momentum shift when he had a big lead, obviously with Eastern states reporting first, and they're coming through. I always thought there would have been a big momentum shift, but it never seemed to shift. Right, it just was strong the whole way through. And another question I wanted to bring up. We actually have a couple of people watching from San Francisco, which is cool. Yeah, very cool. Leo Yu says, "I live in San Francisco. I've got friends in Toronto and a sister in Vancouver. He wants the Canadian economy to prosper." His question is, does the new pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, the reopening of it, does that help the Canadian economy, in your opinion, David?
Very much so. We have an opportunity to pursue a continental energy strategy, and that's always been the case between Canada and the United States. The Keystone XL would make a massive difference in terms of our opportunities into the marketplace. A good example as well is Trans Mountain Pipeline that just came on stream in May, and that's showing a remarkable difference. That's basically over a tripling of the export capacity, and most significantly to Tidewater, to the Pacific. And to my knowledge, much of that product is going not just to the United States, but other nations as well. And this is the issue people don't understand. In Canada, we actually are a price taker, not a price maker. We don't have a fully developed petroleum market in Canada. So it's a dynamic number, but we usually get maybe 15, 20% of world oil market. So this has left literally hundreds of billions of dollars on the table, and is just a travesty, because this could make a difference in every Canadian's life if we got many more pipelines built to us, particularly Tidewater. I'm actually working with a group that is looking at how to create a utility corridor, including a pipeline. It's called Niskastan, which would go from the west to Hudson's Bay. I mean, these are just incredibly rich opportunities for everyone to benefit.
So did you just say that because of a lack of interest or a lack of focus on building Canadian infrastructure when it comes to oil and gas, is that we have not helped our own Canadian economy because we have not done such a poor job at it?
Yes, we've ripped ourselves off. Every politician should be hanging their head in shame. This has affected the standard of living in Canada, in which we've seen a kind of a drop over the last several years, the last decade in particular. So this has been an incredible opportunity. This is actually probably one of the sleeper issues that most Canadians are not even aware of. And this is atrocious.
There's a couple other thoughts and questions been coming in. Obviously, this is going to be involving you to speculate a little bit, David. But what do you think will happen with the Ukraine war, Ukraine-Russia, when Trump
coming from?
Takes office? This is coming from Diane.
Diane. Okay. Thanks, Diane.
I would be going out on a limb, but I think within a month you'll have a negotiated peace settlement.
Wow. I like that prediction. Okay.
I'll bet you a loony. But there will be enormous focus on creating that type of peace settlement.
I'll bet you a toonie, David, if we can get our hands on some.
A month from now, or a month from Trump stepping into office officially?
I would say the positioning will begin immediately, but the agreement will likely coincide with January, with the assumption of office.
Wow.
A gentleman put in the comment on this oil and gas side. He put a comment saying, "I have been hearing talk of a pipeline from Alberta through the Yukon up into Alaska. Never heard anything more. That would be a fantastic opportunity." Does that sound like anything you recognize, David?
Yes. There's a series of, some of them are more advanced, others are more conceptual proposals of this idea of a utility corridor. So in other words, the whole idea is that in order to speed up approvals, you create a corridor that is several kilometers wide and you work with First Nation communities and others to basically look at everything on the table, whether it's natural gas, oil, in some cases shipping other things on rail, transmission of electricity. We need to build this country, particularly in the north. If you compare and contrast northern Canada with, say, Alaska, there's no comparison. We're so underdeveloped and developed in a way that really doesn't enable the country nor people to move forward. And I can think the seminal moment to that was the Berger report in 1979 that basically looked at the Mackenzie pipeline project and basically said hands off, no development. And that was, I think, a strategic error, and that everybody's been paying for it since then. And it also begs the question, how do we assert Arctic sovereignty if we're not really there?
Let's get to the Trump-Trudeau relationship. Do you think that this has any impact on Trudeau's future as prime minister, whether he calls an election sooner or later, or whether he rides it out? Does this impact that? I know we talked about this maybe a couple of weeks ago when you were on with us on Citizen, but has this changed your opinion?
Well, it's hard to say. I think it has some potential bearing in the sense that, again, the Liberals show kind of I look at this in terms of basic political strategy, an opportunity for the Liberals yet again to try to find an appropriate wedge issue against their political opponents. Because there's often a rhetorical stage where they try to refer to the leader of the opposition as the mini-me of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Or, as somehow that the conservative movement today is the same thing as the so-called mega people. And of course, the Democrats have done a masterful job vilifying, among many people's minds, particularly Canadians, because they take in U.S. mainstream media or legacy media. And so they don't quite understand what that movement is actually about. It's actually about people wanting a voice over the elites, ironically, the establishment in some way. So I think this is where it remains to be seen how they play that. I think that any political party in Canada does well to focus on establishing a positive relationship. I think Donald Trump is certainly other commentators like our friend Conrad Black would assert, who does relate to that president closely, would assert that there's no agenda there against Canada, but they do want to work with them. But it's going to take a real focus to establish that relationship and take advantage of that. So relations do matter, and I think that's where Mr. Trudeau, if he can establish that relationship, in the past, it appears that there wasn't a really workable relationship, but so we'll wait and see.
One question I was going to ask you, and I was thinking about asking you this last night, but it seems like on the grander scale from the world perspective, we're seeing more conservative governments step into federal positions worldwide. It seems like there's almost a trend that's happening there. What's your take on that? And is it even accurate what I'm saying from your opinion?
I haven't done a kind of a larger analysis of that, but I think that the real point you're getting at, Jeremy, is a good one. And that is, I think there's a lot of people that are feeling tired of not being able to move forward in their lives. There's been disastrous policy after policy in so many nations regarding both affordability, immigration, concerns regarding kind of this cultural socialism or wokeism.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of offensive to most people.
Yeah.
I think poll after poll, I can think of many of them, it's not just Canada, but elsewhere. Most 80% are kind of grounded in more of a traditional kind of view of life where they just want to be left alone to live and prosper, be with their families, thrive, and kind of have minimal government so they can do what they want to do.
Yeah.
That's
so
a solid
this whole
point.
idea that there's people in charge that, the so-called good and the great have this prerogative to somehow run our lives is like, just who thinks that? Like, I mean, it's so presumptuous. It's kind of begs the question, how do they look at you either as a human or as a tool to be manipulated to their own ends and their own benefit? I mean, I think people are seeing that. And I think COVID-19, its management begged those questions.
Yeah, it was definitely the catalyst, I think, to a lot of change we're seeing today. For sure.
I think so.
Well, David, we thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for the hang as the bold, courageous leaders on the frontier, the leader of the leaders on the frontier. For all of you guys who are watching David Leis, this is David Leis from the Frontier Center of Public Policy, the president of the Frontier Center for Public Policy. And he's got a great team that he's working with. If you ever want to check out what they're doing, if you want to know issues in Canada, if you want to know not just issues, solutions for issues, you can go check out their website, watch David's show. Like Leighton, they have got great guests and they have great opinions and thought themselves. So I'm going to push all of you guys to go follow them, check them out. David, appreciate you, man.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
David_FL, we are glad you stumbled upon us as well.
I just want to say, everyone else in the comments, David FL is beating you
extremely active.
Bad.
Should we do another giveaway?
No, I think we should just take
give away
the
the
Titanic away from Katya. And we're not going to do that, Katya. Don't worry.
How boring would the iceberg be by itself, eh?
We should give one of them the iceberg and one of them the Titanic. That's good.
Funny.
David and Leighton, both some awesome friends. You know, I texted one of our other friends. I'm not sure if you guys remember. His name's Johnny Moore. But he can't. He literally texted me saying, I just got off the plane internationally. He's over in the Middle East. And he says, I literally just got off the plane. I would love to join you, but I can't right now.
Let's maybe see if we can get him on our next live.
He said he wants to do it soon with us. So
for those who don't know who Johnny is, he's one of the most connected guys we've ever met, and somehow we connected with him, which I don't even remember the whole story back there. But he's the kind of guy that knows everyone, is a great human being, and is literally involved in some of the largest international conflicts on planet Earth.
Exactly. He's a massive advocate for religious freedoms around the world. He often meets with leaders and kings and rulers of countries in the Middle East, and he helps broker agreements. He's been a part. He's personal friends, I know, with different, really, I won't say who they are, but this guy is a wealth of knowledge. He sold his PR company recently, and so he's focusing on this stuff, which is really interesting. So we're going to get his take on as well. I love what Connor said. Golf clap for David FL. Thank you, Connor.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining and helping us out on that.
There you go. That's funny, man. That was some brilliant thoughts, though. I really enjoy those two men and what they had to say.
One thing that really impresses me, I was just thinking about this last night. For how old is Donald Trump? He's in his mid-70s?
76, I think.
How resilient,
unreal
he is.
Unreal.
If you think about the resiliency that he has showed, not just the energy. Like how much the camp, like there's, I know we mentioned that he's obviously he's had 34 indictments against him. He's had a lot of different things going on. There's oftentimes on the campaign trail, he'd be in court in the morning and he'd be campaigning in the evening, right?
Yeah.
With 900 appearances. You look at all of the academia.
There's many days he did
Hollywood.
3 cities a day.
I know. The U.S. government lawfare was against him, but he's had his life attempted twice, I guess, right? You look at it, I just want to say the resiliency is actually quite amazing that he keeps going when he doesn't have to, right? That's something that impressed me.
Even just the campaign schedule for anyone, for a young man, that'd be brutal.
Yeah.
Never mind a 70-year-old man. It's just next level. And then speeches and Joe Rogan shows and three-hour podcasts, all of that, like nonstop, answering questions and thoughts, and like he went there. It's crazy, his resilience.
I think that
energy.
I wanted to bring that up earlier when Leighton said about the Joe Rogan podcast. I think the Joe Rogan podcast with Donald Trump helped him a ton in the last number of weeks. Getting a long form interview, 3 and a bit hours, where there's just guys that are talking about issues, but also kind of just shooting the breeze a bit and going around. I think it really gave an insight, and it helped what Trump has been doing for years, is his ability to appeal to the everyday, the quote unquote everyday citizen, the hardworking American, the middle class, the backbone of the country, where he was able to tap into a vein that spoke right to them. It wasn't in condescension. It wasn't in I'm bigger than you or better than you. It's like he's an everyday dude, Donald Trump, that you could sit down with, you could talk with, you could have a drink with, you could hang out with, you could do that. Where the other side, Kamala and their team, they just don't put that same feel out. They bring in celebrities to endorse and to be at their rallies, like whether it's Cardi B or it's Beyonce.
You know what was the funniest
but brings in
one I
people
saw?
that generally are condescending and probably, I don't know them, but probably think they're better than you as a middle-class person. And that's a major separation, which I think brought out this middle-class vote to be like, we're done with this crap.
You know, it's one of the funniest ones I saw. And tell me, anyone in the comments, if you guys saw this one, but it was J-Lo endorsing Kamala. And it said, J-Lo married P. Diddy. Should we trust her judgment now? I was like, the internet never fails. Like, it's just like, gosh. But I want to ask you too, and again, anyone to the comments. Apparently, when Trump's video with Joe Rogan went live, I laughed so hard, my eyes are watering. I like have tears
right now.
Yeah, when I did that laugh, I was like,
when I did that laugh,
I was so funny that I laughed so hard.
I thought it was like a medium type laugh.
And well, what am I trying to say? Joe Rogan's podcast with Trump apparently was unlisted for the first many hours, to the point where Joe Rogan on his Instagram, I have it right here, this is Joe Rogan's Instagram, and it says, since there's an issue searching for the episode on YouTube, here's the full podcast with Trump. He had to put it on his Instagram because YouTube was burying it.
Crazy.
Which is nuts.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of just speaks to it too. But within 12 or 15 hours, it was already at like 10 or 12 million views. And I think now it's sitting around 40 or 45 million views. But think about that. You're talking about 45 million views. Now it's probably worldwide. It's probably worldwide. Who knows? I don't know how many from the US. But look at the popular vote size. 50, 51. What's he at? 57 million views or votes.
For who?
Well, I think Trump got 57 million votes. I got it right. I got it right here. Trump had 72. Sorry, 72 million votes for Trump and 67 for Kamala. Okay. But think about the Joe Rogan video was 50 million views.
Yeah,
it had to have had an incredible impact, and YouTube would have known that. That's the conspiracy, at least being tossed out there. Yeah, is that they had buried it.
Well, and this coalition, RFK, Vance, JD Vance, as vice president, also did he do Rogan as well? I think he did Joe Rogan as well, at least in
he did. Did
right
you watch
after.
It was pretty brilliant.
I actually haven't watched that one.
In fact,
I watched the Trump one.
In my opinion, more so than Trump's.
Really?
Because JD Vance, Trump does what Trump does.
Yeah.
He kind of does these like circles, and he's a good conversationalist, and he's just kind of going through that. Whereas JD Vance is just like, bam, bam, thought after thought after thought, and he's brilliant, and he's very concise and clean and clear about his thoughts. David FL, Rogan's main platform, is on Spotify. That's where they get most of their views. I didn't even realize that. But yes, YouTube buries the search. I checked, and they did bury it. He said he saw it himself. But yeah, that's a big deal. Like, that's a really, really big deal. So that's not cool.
I wanted to show this clip. I'll pause it, from Chrystia Freeland, Brian Lilly.
Vance 2028. I wonder.
Well, I think that's probably why he picked Vance as his VP, as a guy that is Trumpian, like, that can continue on in the same fashion.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you didn't pick up Governor of Florida DeSantis on it, but
interesting what happened.
Interesting
there.
guy. But here, Andrea, if you can take my phone, I'm going to play this clip. This is Chrystia Freeland talking today. If we're good to go, I think I'm screen mirroring. We're good. There we are. Press play.
I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate President Trump and his team on their historic victory. Canada looks forward to working in close partnership with our American friends and neighbors.
Great.
I also want to say, I know that a lot of Canadians are anxious. A lot of Canadians have been anxious this week. A lot of Canadians were anxious throughout the night. And I want to say, with utter sincerity and conviction to Canadians, that Canada will be absolutely fine.
My fellow Americans, we all knew this day was
shocking. Okay, the only good thing about that video is she's wearing a poppy. That's it.
Okay, I'll be a little nicer than you. What's going on with my phone? Sorry, guys.
Get out of my head. No,
I'm still on my screen mirroring. That's the only thing. I thought it was a good start. Close neighbors and friends. We want to work together. But at the end, what she was trying to reassure anxious Canadians,
I just don't.
Isn't reassuring because we've had 9 years of what we've had.
Here, I'm going to talk like her, okay?
Don't
David, here in Canada, like look at her, the way she talks, man. Sorry, I'm being mean now, but she seems like a robot. That's the part that it's weird. It doesn't seem real or authentic the way she's talking, and she's been accused of not accused, but people are always wondering like, why is she speaking that way? What's going on?
I wanted to bring this up too, Jer, because this I thought was another view of a double standard we have going on. Andrew, I'm going to press play again. Tell me when you are ready. And sorry guys, here we go. Disaster with the phone.
Yeah, you're a wreck.
I got so many things I'm juggling.
What is going on?
And we will continue to wage this fight in the voting booth, in the courts, and in the public square. And we will also wage it.
On this, are there any states where women face prosecution for having an abortion?
You need to get your phone under control.
Oh my gosh, I'm one-handing it and I'm screwing it up so bad.
Everybody
but you got the point.
Get it together.
The reason why I wanted to bring
comments.
that because in her, there's been a lot of talk, and she's made a point of saying we will peacefully transfer the peaceful transfer of power, which is great. They're saying that, but they're saying it for a reason, to bring back of what happened on January 6th. Now we want to remind people that there was a peaceful transfer of power on January 20th. January 6th isn't the time we transfer. But in that statement, what she said, she used the word fight over 20 times.
I know.
I got this, I think this was Martin Peltier, one of our friends, who tweeted this. And she also said, we will continue to wage the fight in the public square. So just to compare what Trump said in 2020.
Oh, you have it?
I wrote it here.
Okay.
This is what Trump said verbatim.
Let's hear it.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. And then Trump said 2 statements later, I know everyone will be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. So those are the statements that are said. There's obviously a little bit of difference going on, and Trump was aware that people were planning to march to the Capitol, and the crowd took on their own thing. But there's a lot of similarities in the language that's being used. And you look at Democrats over the last, you look at Maxine Waters, you look at all these different people that have used, we're going to take it to the streets. And you look at actual riots and protests of burning down of businesses and all these things that have happened in the wake of George Floyd. This didn't get a lot of coverage, Jeremy, but when President Trump took office in 2016, there were riots throughout the country. Not giant ones, but there were riots that happened. My point in saying this is that it's interesting how one side, because of the bias of the media, and you look at what they want to present, gets brought up. Obviously, the January 6th people walking into the Capitol and the crowd taking on that far really hyped that up. But I'm just talking about the words and the rhetoric used beforehand.
It's interesting.
I would say they're kind of comparable, to be honest. But
yeah, I know. Whenever a politician gets up and talks that way, you're always trying to think, what are they trying to convey? What are they going to do? Where are they going to go? What are they gearing up for? And I wonder what we're going to see her political career do. Very curious.
I think you talk about Kamala, she's going to fade away.
Yeah, you think so? I don't think she has the capacity to do another run.
I think that you could have put up any one of 1,000 Democratic or liberal Democrat politicians in her place to run the campaign that she ran. Anyone, and they would have got the same result. I think she's going to fade away. That's why there's zero talk of her running again in 4 years.
I have a question. Is a previous president allowed to be vice president? Imagine if J.D. Vance made Trump his vice president.
That's a good question. If you guys know that answer in the comments,
wouldn't that be the funniest thing you ever saw? If J.D. Vance gets it and Trump's still there,
does that count as a term?
I have no idea. No, I don't think so. Because if a VP can run for president, they must be you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's what Kamala's
interesting.
Doing. That would be the funniest thing ever. If it's just Trump Vance for that'd be hilarious.
For 16 years.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, maybe we should wrap it up soon. I think any other things you wanted to chat through? If you have any last
yes, he can,
questions.
Diane says.
Oh, interesting.
That'd be hilarious.
That would be hilarious.
That'd be so funny. Gosh, talk about a sweep.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with the foreign policy, the wars that are waging around the world, to see what Trump does.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens with China. I know they're very interested, as David Leis was saying, in terms of the China interference for sure in Canada. We've seen a lot of these Chinese police stations with interference, especially with provincial BC elections of MLAs and MPs. We've seen some interference that way. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Oil and gas will be interesting to see what happens with Canada and the economy.
There's a lot to watch.
Also, whether Canada's going to have...
RFK even has a plan already, apparently, for day one. Apparently for the RFK is saying he's going to already abolish fluoride on day one. I don't know to what extent.
Gone.
Just get rid of fluoride throughout the United States. I don't know what the means are doing that, but maybe it's by...
Well, he's going to go in and it's going to be... He's got a shot to do the things that he's been saying he's been wanting to do for a long time.
The ripple effects.
And if you think about what he had to do, like he was a guy running for president, right? Yeah. He put what he was running on his platform, took priority over his own ego and pride and him being the man. He saw a better chance with Trump to be able to get what he believes in.
That's refreshing.
Very refreshing.
In the world of politics, where someone is driven by their heart and their passion to even withdraw their own party.
Public servant.
Gosh, man, yeah.
And so Trump gave him 3 things. I wrote them down here. Number 1, clean up corruption in government health agencies. So get rid of the corruption. Number 2, return the agencies to their rich tradition of gold standard evidence-based science. Wonderful to hear.
Yes.
Number 3, I love this, MAHA. Make America healthy again.
That's cool. What an amazing thing to go for. That's what I'm so curious to see how the implications for the Food and Drug Association and what that's going to do for changing standardization, which will also change. Like, think about what that would do. Foods that are in the health category will no longer be categorized in health. They'll be like, I heard someone say on Instagram the other day, and I'd love to see if anyone else has seen this. And Tamara, my wife, pointed this out to me. She said, "Isn't it interesting that we have a food health section in the grocery store? What does that make every other part of the store?
Full of petroleum and
disease.
Crap.
Here's the disease 100%. Section. Here's the health section.
Have you seen the food pyramid?
And think about how ridiculous that is. Oh yeah, the food
pyramid. What they say you should be eating, you literally like flip it upside down.
Madness.
It is insane what that has done. And you look at why America is such an unhealthy nation.
Remember the movie Thank You for Smoking?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think you showed me that movie years ago. Thank You for Smoking. It was called.
Yeah.
Watch that movie tonight, guys. Actually, I can't endorse it. I don't remember much of if it was good or bad. You know how when you recommend a movie sometimes to a friend?
I love the movie.
I have no idea if it has good or bad stuff. I don't know its rating. I don't know.
It's a great movie.
Okay, good.
It's a great movie.
But as far as what it's talking about and exposing, you guys should watch it. It's called Thank You for Smoking.
There's this one scene in Thank You for Smoking.
China. Thanks, Chris.
Where they're sitting on a talk show and there's a kid who developed cancer because he was smoking from such a young age. And they have the advocate for the big smoking companies. Like they have the big 3, the gun and licensing, you've got the gambling, and you've got smoking. And he's sitting there and he's a master of spin. He's spinning everything he can. So they're saying, how could you represent this group of companies that has literally made this? And this is how his response is. He goes, guys, we do not want this boy to suffer. We do not want him to have cancer. It's actually in our best interest to have him alive, healthy, and smoking. So it's just the whole movie is about propaganda and the spin machine and how people can be so manipulated by it. And it's a real thing. But
it was a very eye-opening movie. And so that movie was called Thank You for Smoking. I'm curious if anyone's watched it or seen it. If you haven't, very educational for what happened back in the U.S. in the smoking era when it was allowed on airplanes and stores and pregnant ladies. There was advertisements of pregnant people, pregnant women smoking. Like it was such a different time. I can't even wrap my head around it. But
any last clips you want to show? Any fun ones?
I don't have any. No, I think this was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for joining for the ride. I really think we're going to talk about how frequent we're going to be doing lives as we grow, as we get a larger audience and things continue to go on. I'm excited about it. So
I think just in our closing thoughts is that I love what you and I are doing. This is really a passion project for us. We're away from our families and our kids when we do these, and we've got a lot of stuff going on in our life, but we think that this is so vital, hence why we have got great friends that we've had on the show and other guys who are doing this across the country. But we want to see this Return the Reason grow. We want to see what we're doing, not just as Citizen, but our whole growth expand across Canada, because we believe Canada needs to have a lot of voices to speak up. We started with Leon, our father-in-law, who started this show, Return the Reason, several years ago, and
sent us to Ottawa.
Sent us to Ottawa when the trucker rally was happening. We were there on the ground for 2 weeks. But we really love your support. Love when you guys join and comment, share, interact with us, because as you know, the way the algorithms are all made, that helps us get pushed organically in front of other people who would no longer, like one of the guys joined us tonight for the first time, probably because it got pushed to him.
Yeah.
And
David.
That's right, David FL. We Rome was not built in a day. So and also, here's a quote from the Bible: "Never despise the day of small beginnings." We do love what we're building. So again, all that to say, thank you for your support, your continued support. We do believe the best is yet to come for Canada, and we hope to have a part to play with that.
Like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button. That way, when we go live, you'll get notified straight to your phone. You won't miss a thing. Anytime we post, it'll go to you. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Good night, y'all. The show goes on.
Show goes on.